Good morning. Welcome to another edition of Tech Tuesday, presented by Delta Media Group, where apparently it takes 8 years, 8 months, and 16 days to live the perfect day if you're doing it in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. So, today we are going to jump into the DeltaNET and take a look at how you can add media to listings. We'll look over some other things on the listing editing page, just kind of so you can get a feel for everything that you can do there. But our primary focus will be about how we can change the images and how we can do things like add videos to listings so that they show up on your listing detail pages. So let's go into the DeltaNET and take a look. Now first off, we're going to go down to listings and active listings. And this is where you can see all of the listings that you currently have active in the system. Now right now these are pocket listings, so I've entered these manually just for the sake of testing and demonstration. But if these were coming from the MLS, those listings would show up here also. The only difference is they would not say pocket listing here under type. And then under status, keep in mind that it will show more than just active. So if they were pending or contingent, they would still show up on this page and it would actually say pending or contingent over here. Now, there are a number of things that you can do on this page, but we're going to focus on just getting into the listing and making modifications there. But while we're on here, note that if you click the plus sign, it'll expand down here, and you'll see any columns that your browser's not able to display just because it runs out of room. And then also you have this Tools button that gives you access to a variety of different features related to the listing. Mostly it's about creating marketing materials. You can send out an e-card from here. You can create a print flyer, add an open house to the listing. So there are a number of different things you can do here, but we'll get into detail on that stuff in another video. So for now, to add media to a listing, we're going to click on the MLS ID over here. Now again, this isn't really the MLS ID obviously because it's a pocket listing, but I'll click on that. That'll take me through to the listing profile page here in the DeltaNET. And now you can see at the top, we have a little bit of information about the listing. Right here you have a shortcut to get to the detail page for that listing on your public site. I don't think this domain is hooked up because it's a test account, so I won't click on it. But that'll take you through to your public site where you can see the actual listing and how it's displayed publicly. And then as we go down, you have the address, you have a little bit of information, the MLS ID, price, how long it's been in the system, which I've had this test listing in here for a while. But that's what you have there. And as we scroll down, the next thing you can do is if for some reason this listing is showing up in the wrong place in the map search, this section allows you to correct that. So this will happen a lot with new construction listings more often. We're going mostly based on Google as to where the listing actually is. So if it's a new construction, Google may not know where it is. If Google doesn't know, then it could show up in the wrong place. So to fix that, you would just click here on is this in the right position, and then you can move your little dot around and then hit set this location, and that'll set where that dot shows up. There we go. So from there, the next thing you have is listing information. Now this section shows up because this is a pocket listing. So if I click here to edit pocket listing information, that'll take me to like a listing entry form, a lot like what you would typically see when adding a listing to like an MLS. So this lets me modify that information. We'll go down here to the bottom. And if I had made any changes, I would just make changes on this page and hit submit. But again, this is specific just to pocket listings. So there we go. Let's go back to our profile page. Now as we go down, the next thing I can do is I can add taglines or titles to these. These are mostly used for internal as far as the fields go, just stuff that can be seen in the DeltaNET. Potentially they could be used for other things, if you're using those things, like we have an ad system that can use those as well. Now the one that might show up publicly is tagline, and that's going to depend on the listing detail page template or the results page template that your company is using and that your website is using. But if you're using one that includes this tagline, usually it will show up in the listing card on the results page, just right below the listing. Now next we have the primary virtual tour. Now there's also a secondary virtual tour, and those both work essentially the same way. If you have a URL entered into this field and you hit update virtual tour, it will add a view virtual tour link to your listing detail page, and then when you click on it, that'll take you to wherever this URL is. Typically it opens up in a new window because most virtual tours are kind of built to display that way. But that's what it does. You just enter a URL here, and then it places a link to that URL on the listing detail page, usually right below the main photograph. And the next thing we can do here is we can manually enter a YouTube video and attach a YouTube video to our listing. Now the significance between this and like a virtual tour is that when I add a YouTube video, it's actually going to embed the video on the detail page in most cases. Now if you're a company that has a custom detail page, that might not be included, or might be included in a different place just depending on how that page was built. But on our standard listing detail pages, it'll appear just part of the way down the page. And at the top, there will be a link with your pictures that you click on that takes you down to that lower part of the page where the video is embedded. So to add one, we've got several fields here, and the key is you're not actually going to use all those fields. So I'll go ahead and remove video so that we can start fresh here. There we go. So you can see my YouTube video has been removed. Now to add one in, I'm just going to go to YouTube, and I just happen to have a tab open here. There we go. So now to do this, I'm going to go down to Share, and then this gives me the Share URL here, and I'll just click Copy. Now there are several ways you can really do this, but I've always kind of found this way to be the easiest. So Share and then Copy, and now we'll go back into the DeltaNET. And because I copied the Share URL, that is the video share URL here, I'm just going to paste that in. And now I'm not going to change anything else. So the thing of note here is that the system is going to fill in the rest of the fields automatically. So you definitely don't want to fill in anything in all of them. So now we'll hit Update. There we go. And you see from the share URL, it figured out what the video URL, the video ID, and then the actual iframe code for that video should be. So you could even use this code and embed it in another page somewhere if you wanted to. However, that's all you need to do to get it embedded on the detail page. Now if you needed to remove it from there or change it, you can make any changes in here. Again, you would just change one field and then hit Update and let it update for you. Or remove will obviously delete the video. Now the next thing we have is exactly the same kind of functionality that works in exactly the same way except for Vimeo videos instead of YouTube videos. But those work the same way. So in this case, they don't have a share URL, but what you would do is just go to Vimeo and then look at the URL of the page that you're on up in the address bar and just copy that and paste it in here. Now you'll note that this last piece of the URL is the same as the video ID. So I mean that is the video ID. So if you were to just grab that and paste that in, again you just paste it into one field and hit Save and let the system fill in the rest. But that would be all you have to do, just paste in the video ID and hit Go, and that'll save the same way. Now the next one is Welcome Matt. Again, it works exactly the same way. You can put in a video ID or a video URL and the system will figure out the rest and add it to the page. Next is support for Matterport 3D tours, which again works exactly the same way. It'll put a link to the tour on the page as well as an embedded version of that tour so people can actually follow through the Matterport tour right there on the page. And then we also have a MapRight embed, which is going to work in roughly the same way. Now this one I've never actually used, but the idea is if you have a source URL from MapRight, you could use their map ID or the actual URL of the map and embed that the same way. Now the next piece is if you have the builders and communities info or builder and community system turned on, this is how you could attach this listing to a builder or a community. That's something that's turned on at the company level, but it allows you to create kind of community pages or like builder landing pages, and this is how you would add your listing to those pages. If we click on either of these, you see you can select from the different builders and different communities in the system, and then just hit Update. Next, there is the ability for the system to handle custom fields. So if any custom fields have been added to your listings, again, this isn't really added to your listings, but this is custom fields made available on listings at the company level. This is one thing that can also only be done at the company level, but there is a section here that's dedicated to those custom fields. So sometimes those are used for like third-party feeds, anything like that, but this is where they would be available if they're available at all. In most cases, they won't be. Now, next we have the open houses section. So this is where I would add an open house to the listing if I did in fact have access to add open houses to listing. That's going to be dependent upon company settings as well. But if you do have access to add open houses, this is where you can do it. From here, you just put in a start time, an end time, a date, and you can actually even select another agent to act as the host for the open house. And then you hit Add Open House, and that adds it. Next, we have the set open house availability. What this does is allows you to convey to other agents when this listing is available to an open house so that they can request that they host it for you. All you do here is you put in the date range for when it's available and hit add open house availability, and then that's going to show up in an interface for those agents. And we've got some more detailed videos about that, and I think we're making some updates to that system. So we'll do some more videos as we have more things in on that one, a more dedicated and pointed video for just the open house availability system. Next, you have the ability to add notes, and then you can choose whether or not these notes will appear on the seller reports that you set up to go out to the seller periodically on this listing. The seller reports are just listing traffic reports for the most part, but they can also show notes. If you add a note here and say include it, you can also put in a date for a showing, and it will display sort of as a showing on the seller reports as well. So it's kind of a nice way that you can add some information to those and just have them show up on the seller report so that you don't have to go and add them in a bunch of different places or manage them a bunch of different ways. Now, the other nice thing about the showing date, or the actual adding a showing portion of this, is that you can create a calendar event for the same time. And if you are syncing your Office 365 calendar with the DeltaNET, for example, it will create an event on the calendar which should sync out to your Office 365 calendar. So if you have a showing coming up, you could get it all entered here. It'll show up on the seller report, and it'll add it to your calendar so you have a reminder for that. But you would just fill in these fields, and this is just freeform text. And then this is just a date. There we go. And you would just hit create new note or add new note, and that will put that note into the system. And then from here you can go down and you can see previous notes that have been added in. And now down here you can add in a more detailed showing, and this is a system that we've just added in that allows you to actually put the agent name in, the outside agent name, add in all the extra information related to a showing. Again, this is built to work the same way, and this will be included not in a notes section like the one above, but this one will actually be included in its own showing section on the seller reports if you choose to include them based on this checkbox here. And now the last bit on these pages that has more to do with the media that we were talking about in this video. Down here we have the ability to change out any of the photos. So the key here is that we get the photos from the MLS initially, assuming your listing is coming from the MLS and it's not a pocket listing like this one. When we get those images, those are the ones that we're going to enter by default for the listing. So if you want to go in and change them, maybe you want to replace them with higher quality images or put more images in here. Something that people will do is, maybe you put 10 listing images, the MLS, and all the IDX websites around you are going to get those images at the quality that the MLS serves them up to them. But let's say you wanted to put 25 more images on your website and make them higher quality. And the idea is that then you'll be driving more traffic to your website, at least for that listing, because your website has the most photos and the highest quality photos. So you could go in here and you could add, let's say, as many photos as you want. I don't think I've seen more than 99, but you can enter a lot of photos. So the thing to remember when you do add photos here is that we will no longer update them from the MLS. And we do that so that we don't overwrite your changes. So if I were to go in here and say change this photo with another one, I'm not going to pull any more updated photos from the MLS at that point. Now, if you ever did go in here and change these photos and want to reset it so that it pulls from the MLS again, you can just let us know and we can change that for you so it'll start pulling again. But in the meantime, in order to add these in, we'll just go down here, and first off, I can click download, and I could download this photo if I wanted to just pull this onto my machine because it came in from the MLS. Or I can click on choose file, and I would just select a file and then hit upload photo, and that's going to replace this photo individually with the one that I created. I can add these titles in. I can drag these here if I want to reorder them. And it actually saves as soon as I drag it. So that's something good to keep in mind there. There we go. We'll drag photo 1 back up to the top here. So there it is. So I can reorder the photos that way. And then lastly, I can go down here to the bottom and I can bulk upload photos. So if I had just 10 more photos I wanted to add all at once, I can hit add files. I can select all 10 by hitting, holding down the control key when I click them, or holding down the shift key if I want to select like a whole grouping of them, and then hit open. and it's going to add them here to the uploader, and then I would just hit start upload, and it would upload those files, and it would just kind of tack them onto the end of the list of photos. So that is how I can go in and I can add additional photos if I want. So there you have it. That is how you can add different media and different information to a listing. And yeah, I got a little bit beyond the scope of this, but I wanted to make sure that you saw the showing stuff and everything in there also. So, as always, thanks a lot for joining me. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, or suggestions on how we can improve the system, feel free to give us a call or send an email into support@deltagroup.com, and we'll be happy to help you out. Thanks a lot.